Unfortunately, the big mistake is too many professionals stop way too early in the process for LinkedIn thought leadership. And they are left disappointed because they've invested, they've spent time, and then they just drop the ball and they're like, forget it. This doesn't really work, or I'm not seeing the results as quickly as I'd like to. And that is a problem. So I'm here to encourage you to say, if that's you, please hang on, keep going. It does work. I'm Sylvia Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well-established marketing training and done-for-you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 122 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvia Garibaldi. So today I want to talk about a question that I believe is becoming increasingly important for lawyers, mediators, divorce professionals, and other trust-based practitioners right now. And that question is this: which marketing activities actually produce revenue? So not just visibility, not just impressions or followers, website traffic, but actual revenue, actual consultations that really converts into actual clients. Because I think there's a growing level of frustration happening across the field when it comes to marketing. Many professionals feel like they're working harder than they've ever had to stay visible online, but they're not always seeing a clear connection between all of that effort and actual business growth. So I wonder if this resonates with you, because these professionals are investing money into SEO campaigns, ads, all these things that feel expensive and difficult to measure. So they are hiring agencies that produce reports filled with impressions, engagement statistics, vanity metrics, all without being able to clearly explain how any of this translates into consultations, files, or retained clients. And so, yes, they are posting on social media consistently, sometimes for months, and still wondering, hey, is this leading to the right opportunities? And so I think this frustration becomes even more significant in professions like family law, mediation, dispute resolution, divorce coaching, collaborative practice, estate law. And so these are deeply personal decisions for clients. And so they're not choosing, for example, a divorce mediator the same way that they would choose a pair of shoes online, right? They're not hiring a workplace mediator because someone created a viral reel. And they're not selecting a parenting coordinator or a divorce coach or a collaborative lawyer purely on who posts the most often. They are choosing the professionals whom they trust. And so professionals who appear experienced, stable, credible, thoughtful, and respected, these are the ones that are being chosen, because what we're starting to see right now is a major shift away from what we call attention-based marketing towards trust-based marketing. Okay. And I think this is really important to make the distinction. And so interestingly, some of the data that we're starting to see is supporting this growing frustration, right? One benchmark report found that while the majority of firms are investing in paid search marketing, 82% reported disappointing ROI from these efforts. That's a massive number. And I think what it reflects is not necessarily that marketing itself doesn't work, but rather that professionals are becoming much more selective and intentional about where they invest their time, their energy, and their money. And so this is why I believe that we are seeing a growing interest in marketing activities such as webinars, podcasts, LinkedIn thought leadership, educational content, referral ecosystems. So, in this episode, I want to have a very honest conversation about what is actually producing revenue for lawyers, mediators, and divorce professionals, and what professionals are becoming increasingly skeptical of, and why relationship driven authority marketing may be becoming one of the most important business development shifts happening in this space. And more importantly, I'm going to reveal the top 4 marketing initiatives that are actually producing revenue. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. Let's dive right in. So, what I'm seeing increasingly work well for professionals right now in this space are marketing activities that actually create authority and relationships simultaneously. So, let me explain. I think the distinction here is going to be incredibly important because for a long time, a lot of marketing advice focused almost entirely on visibility and attention, right? More posting, more reach, more traffic. But what many professionals are now starting to realize is that visibility alone doesn't necessarily create trust. Okay, so people are not simply hiring a service provider because they see them posting all the time. They're actually choosing someone to guide them through one of the most emotionally difficult, financially stressful, and personally vulnerable periods of their lives, whether this is in family law, estate law, workplace mediation. It's all incredibly stressful. And so when I look at what's actually producing meaningful opportunities right now, a few things stand out. And so the first one I want to talk about, because I'm going to talk about 4 of them. The first one is webinars. So webinars, they continue to be one of the most effective trust building tools available for lawyers, mediators, and divorce professionals. And honestly, I think many professionals still underestimate how powerful webinars can become when they are done strategically and consistently. Why? Because webinars compress trust in a way that very few other marketing activities can. A social media post is going to give you visibility. It's going to give your readers a glimpse into how you think. But a webinar allows them to experience you for a complete hour. They get to hear your perspective, your communication style, your level of professionalism, your approach to problem solving, your philosophy, your personality, and the way that you explain difficult or emotionally charged issues. And in high trust professions, this matters tremendously. And a webinar also allows someone to begin building familiarity and comfort with you long before they ever schedule a consultation. And I think that changes the entire dynamic of the relationship because instead of entering the consultation as a complete stranger, you already feel somewhat known to them because they've attended one of your webinars. So there's already a level of credibility established. There's a level of trust developing. Okay, I hope that's making sense. And so webinars will position you very differently in the marketplace because they position you as an educator, as a guide, as someone who is helping people understand a process rather than simply trying to sell a service. So, this distinction is becoming increasingly important because professionals and consumers alike are becoming more resistant to what I would call overly transactional marketing. People want insight. They want clarity into concepts and ideas that maybe they find difficult to understand. They want someone who appears calm, experienced, thoughtful, and capable of helping them navigate complexity. I really believe that webinars create this type of environment where all of those qualities can become visible very quickly. So, what's really powerful is that webinars don't only attract potential clients, they also attract referral partners, therapists, financial professionals, other lawyers, divorce coaches, parenting professionals, HR professionals. And so many of these referral relationships can continue producing opportunities for years after one single presentation. And interestingly, even many legal organizations and associations continue investing heavily in webinar education because they recognize how effective educational trust building continues to be within this sector. All right, if you're listening to this and thinking, this makes sense, but I'm not sure how to actually implement this into my practice, that's exactly where we support our clients at SG and Associates. So please reach out to me. There will be a link in the show notes and book a consultation call with me, and we'll figure out the best way to get you moving in the direction that will produce the quickest results for your practice. Okay, so let's move on to the second one. Podcasts are becoming increasingly powerful for lawyers, mediators, divorce professionals because they build something that is becoming more valuable than ever in marketing today, and that is long form authority. I know we've kind of moved from short content being the best, but now long form authority or long form content is becoming increasingly important. And I think this is an important distinction because most marketing today, as I mentioned, is built around very short attention spans. A LinkedIn post that may take somebody 20 seconds to read. A reel may get even less time, right? But a podcast can hold someone's attention really well for 20 to 30 minutes and sometimes even an hour. We're seeing now that some podcasts are really hitting the hour mark or more. And that is a massive difference when it comes to trust building because trust is rarely, very rarely built in one interaction. I think we all know that, right? Trust is usually built through repeated exposure. And you've heard me talk about this a lot. So, through hearing someone consistently, understanding how they think, listening to how they explain maybe more complex situations, observing how they handle nuance, emotion, conflict, uncertainty, difficult conversations. And so, podcasts create space for all of that. And so, a podcast also allows people to hear you in a much more human and natural way and not polished or overly scripted. And so I think thoughtful conversations, insights, and education and perspective over time, this does build trust. That matters tremendously here because prospective clients and referral partners are often trying to answer questions long before they ever contact you. So for prospective clients, they may be asking themselves, does this person understand my situation? Do they have the right skill sets to help me solve the problem that I need solved? Do they sound trustworthy? Can I trust them? Would I feel safe working with them? And I think podcasts help answer those questions before the consultation ever happens. And podcasts also create incredible secondary opportunities that many people don't really think about. Things like referral relationships, collaborative partnerships, media exposure, guest opportunities, networking opportunities, industry visibility, authority positioning. I could go on and on and on. So incredible secondary opportunities because once you begin consistently producing thoughtful conversations and educational content, what happens is people start associating you with leadership and expertise within your field. And that often opens the doors far beyond the podcast itself. And I can say that from my experience personally is what I'm seeing from our podcast and from the myriad of conversations that I have with professionals every single day. So I do think podcasts work particularly well for lawyers and mediators because in these professions, there's a lot of communication around how you explain things. And it's important because referral partners and prospective clients are listening, and they're listening with a keen ear. So I think a podcast simply gives you that platform to make that expertise visible and accessible. And as I mentioned, it's that repeated exposure that builds the familiarity. And trust is often what ultimately leads to those consultation calls, to those referrals, to those collaborations, and those long-term professional opportunities. So I want you to think of it this way. A podcast with, let's say, 200 ideal listeners. Maybe there are referral partners listening, potential clients, collaborative professionals, and they're all within your niche. This can create tremendous long-term business opportunities because authority compounds over time. And I think we are increasingly seeing that podcasting is no longer simply a content strategy. it becomes a relationship building strategy, a trust building strategy. And it's one that works incredibly well. Okay, so LinkedIn continues to stand out as one of the most effective platforms for professionals today. And I think that consistency matters far more than many professionals realize because one of the biggest challenges in professional services today is not necessarily competence. There are so many highly skilled professionals. The challenge becomes visibility. The challenge becomes staying top of mind. The challenge is helping people understand who you are, what you do, how you think, what you believe, and why your approach may be different from others in your field. I'm sure all of you listening to this can relate to it. And LinkedIn creates an environment where that can actually happen very effectively, especially because it reaches two very important audiences simultaneously: your end client, which is your ideal client, and your referral partner clients. And quite honestly, I think that it's one of the most overlooked aspects of LinkedIn marketing for lawyers and mediators today. So, this is number three, folks. LinkedIn thought leadership is number three in terms of what we're seeing to consistently bring in revenue. It's a marketing practice that actually works when it's done consistently. So, when you think about who your referral partners are, you know you're going to find them on LinkedIn. That's the given. And so, these are often the people who consistently influence referrals and introductions. And so, LinkedIn allows you to make those connections. These conversations, these insights are built through repeated exposure over time. They're seeing your ideas, they're seeing your consistency, they're seeing your thought leadership, how you communicate, the quality of your thinking. LinkedIn thought leadership really allows all of this to become visible. And I think it's important to clarify something here because the phrase thought leadership sometimes makes professionals a bit uncomfortable. Many people hear that phrase and they think, oh, well, this is self promotion. And if you've listened to any of the other episodes I've produced, you know, in fact, that that's not the case. Real thought leadership done properly is not self promotion. It's not saying, look how successful I am, look at me, look at what I achieved, because we know that doesn't build trust. Thought leadership, when done properly, is really about perspective. It's about education, insight, and clarity. And it's really about helping people understand complicated issues more clearly. And it allows people to think differently about problems that they're facing when you educate them in a way or in a perspective that they didn't quite understand or didn't even think of. And so over time, your content begins teaching people how you think, what you value, how you approach conflict, how you communicate, and why your approach may be different from someone else's. And stop looking at the vanity metrics. Quite frankly, we have people approach us consistently saying, we've been following your work for a while. They've been reading the content. They've been responding to us in the DMs, and they're booking consultation calls with us. And when we get on calls with them and they say, you know, I've been reading your content for a long time, and we go back to posts and we see that they've never liked a post before, right? So it's a quiet engine that's running in the background. And I think what is one of the most difficult things for professionals to understand is it's so quiet that they assume that it's not going to produce the results. And I'm here to tell you that LinkedIn Thought Leadership is one of those channels and one of those tools that we see produce consistent results quietly in the background. And yes, it does take some time to work. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Some people think, oh, I'm going to post for a couple of months and boom, it's just going to happen. No, it is a quiet engine that's running in the background. And if you're impatient and you're thinking, well, I need this to move faster in terms of LinkedIn thought leadership, then you're going to be disappointed. But I can tell you, the people that engage in this consistently, they have that quiet marketing engine continually on. It's running in the background and it's bringing in clients. I just want to be clear about that because people get frustrated and they're like, does this really work? And yes, we do have proof to show that it does work. And there's a lot of data out there that also supports this. Unfortunately, the big mistake is too many professionals stop way too early in the process for LinkedIn thought leadership. And they are left disappointed because they've invested, they've spent time, and then they just drop the ball and they're like, forget it. This doesn't really work, or I'm not seeing the results as quickly as I'd like to. And that is a problem. So I'm here to encourage you to say, if that's you, please hang on, keep going. It does work. Remember, in this podcast episode, I'm sharing with you the top 4 things that we see consistently work, not only in our business, but in the practice of many successful professionals. So I want to move on to number 4, because honestly, I believe that relationship-based marketing is becoming more important than ever. And I think one of the reasons for that is because so much of modern marketing feels increasingly unstable. What do I mean by this? Well, algorithms change, platforms change, advertising costs rise, SEO strategies are continually shifting, AI is making things even more unstable in terms of how do you get found on AI. And of course, we know social media reach fluctuates constantly. And so many professionals feel like they are continuously trying to keep up with systems that never seem to stop moving. So strong professional relationships, they operate very differently because genuine relationships tend to continue producing opportunities long after that campaign ends or that ad stops running or that social media trend disappears. And I think many professionals underestimate how much business actually comes from long-term relationship visibility rather than short-term marketing tactics. Please let that set in for a moment. So, referral ecosystems are incredibly valuable, especially in trust-based professions like yours, because people often hire professionals based on confidence transferred through relationships. Because someone says, you should really speak to this professional, or I trust them. They're thoughtful, they're experienced, they're really good with difficult situations, and I think they'd be a great fit for you. So that kind of trust transfer, I believe, is incredibly powerful. And interestingly, LinkedIn's own professional networking resources, they continue to emphasize that trust within the legal and professional networks is built gradually through consistency, through responsiveness, listening, empathy, and ongoing connection over time. And so I also think that many lawyers and mediators really do underestimate how much business actually comes from staying consistently visible and connected with the right people over long periods of time. So I want to emphasize long periods of time because nothing really happens in one interaction, right? It takes time. It takes repetition. So it's important to not be selling constantly, to not be pitching constantly, not asking for referrals every single week, but simply remaining present in people's minds, commenting thoughtfully on someone's post, checking in periodically, supporting another professional's event, collaborating on a webinar, featuring someone on your podcast, all of these things, inviting them into conversations. And like over time, these small interactions, they compound. So relationships are often built through repeated moments of visibility and trust rather than one major networking event or one sales conversation. And I think this is particularly important for professionals because referral relationships often develop much more slowly than people expect. Many people think, oh, I met this person once. Why haven't I received a referral yet? But we know, like in reality, most professionals are very cautious about referrals because, let's be clear here, their reputation is attached to that recommendation. That means trust must usually develop first. In fact, many business development experts within this field emphasize that referrals are often the result of repeated, meaningful interactions and sustained visibility rather than those isolated events. And I think that's where consistency becomes incredibly important because when someone repeatedly sees your professionalism, your generosity, your insights, your communication style, they begin forming familiarity with you. And that familiarity reduces uncertainty because it creates comfort, it creates confidence. Pretty simple, right? And eventually, when the right situation appears, your name comes to mind naturally. So, I really do believe that relationship based marketing works incredibly well for this profession. And most people don't suddenly trust someone because they saw one article or they read one blog post. Trust is usually developed gradually. And I think that's important to understand here. So, I really do think that's why relationship based marketing is becoming increasingly attractive to professionals in this field who really want more sustainable and trust based growth in their practice. So I think the real shift happening here is this: professionals are slowly moving away from attention based marketing, really towards trust based marketing. And honestly, I think this is a very significant shift because for many years, marketing conversations focused heavily on visibility metrics. As I talked about, more reach, more traffic, more content, more exposure. And you know that I'm a big believer that visibility is at the forefront and it still matters a lot, but it matters what type of visibility you're creating. Okay, I hope that makes sense because many professionals are starting to realize that attention alone is no longer enough, especially in high stakes professional services like yours. So people aren't simply choosing a service, they're choosing judgment, a communication style. And because of that, trust becomes far more important than attention alone. That's why there is growing skepticism right now around things like go viral or hack the algorithm, get more followers. Because deep down, many professionals really understand that the number of followers, they don't automatically equal clients. A viral post is actually the opposite, in my opinion, to be quite honest, because usually viral means everyone and their family is looking at your post. But everyone and their family is probably not your ideal target market, right? So, this is why viral posts very rarely equal clients. And this is something that I've observed over time, and it's really important to take that into consideration. So, I want you to think about this. Instead of asking, how do I get more attention? I want you to think about asking yourself, how do I become more trusted, more respected, more top of mind? And it's a completely different mindset. And I think it's one of the biggest shifts happening right now in this space. The marketing activities that tend to produce the strongest long term business growth are the four that I just shared with you. And those are the ones that we see that are working incredibly well. Okay, so ultimately, I think this is where marketing for professionals is heading away from simply trying to appear busy online, away from chasing algorithms and constant attention, and really towards that authority and trust. Because in high trust professions, people are not simply buying services, they're buying confidence, confidence in your judgment, confidence in your process, and confidence in your ability to make them understand the complexity of what they're experiencing and helping them reach the right solution. And because of that, the marketing activities that I just outlined tend to produce the strongest and most sustainable revenue over time. And they're usually the ones that we see are strengthening that confidence consistently. And not necessarily the ones making the most noise online, and not necessarily the ones generating the biggest vanity metrics, but the ones that are really just building that familiarity, credibility, and trust. And honestly, I think that's encouraging for many professionals. Thanks for tuning in today. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes packed with actionable strategies to grow your practice. See you in the next episode.